Ready to dive into some more of the stuff that makes you go, I never thought about it like that.
I'm always ready. It's like our thing, right?
Yep.
Unpacking how we get information, what gets emphasized, what gets,
Exactly. And today, we're going global. Specifically, the wild world of international news.
buckle up, everyone. It's about to get interesting.
You know how sometimes the way news is presented feels a little, I don't know, slanted?
Oh, just a little. Come on now.
But seriously,
Yeah.
right. And we're not talking about fake news here, but the actual words they choose.
Yeah.
Like those choices, they matter.
Absolutely. Word choices, they're sneaky little things. Subtle but powerful enough to shape an entire narrative.
Right. Like painting a whole country as the good guy or the bad guy just by how you describe their actions.
It's incredible how effective it can be. We think we're forming our own opinions, but those opinions are being molded by language all the time.
And that's what we're digging into today. We've been obsessing over this piece by Caitlin Johnstone. She's an independent journalist, and she does not hold back.
She really doesn't. Johnston brings up some really striking examples of how language is used inconsistently when reporting on conflicts around the world.
Yeah. Like this one really jumped out at me. She points out how often Iran's attacks are described as escalating a situation. But when it comes to, say, Israel taking similar action, it's expanding the conflict.
Expanding almost sounds expected.
Right, like it's just the natural order of things. But escalating, that points the finger, doesn't it? Like someone's deliberately making things worse.
Huge difference. See, this is what I love about Johnstone. She's not necessarily taking sides. She's just highlighting the double standard, forcing us to ask, why the different language?
And that's what we're all about here, right?
Yeah.
Asking those questions. Another one that's hard to ignore is how actions from Lebanon often get slapped with the terrorism label, while similar actions from Israel are framed as self-defense.
Man, you talk about loaded terms. Terrorism. Instant villain right there. It shuts down any possibility of understanding the motivations or the context.
Totally shuts it down. And it's not like we're saying one side is right or wrong here, but come on, using such different language to describe similar actions, that's got to make people question what they're reading.
Especially when you consider the history of the region. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is incredibly complex, goes back generations, tossing around labels like terrorism without acknowledging that complexity is, well, it's irresponsible.
It really oversimplifies things, doesn't it? And it's not just the Middle East. She also talks about how Russia's actions in Ukraine are consistently called an invasion.
Which, let's be honest, it is.
Right. But then when you look at, say, Israel's actions, you're more likely to hear about limited ground operations. It's subtle, but come on.
Subtle but powerful. Invasion evokes images of a large-scale, almost chaotic assault, but a limited ground operation. That sounds controlled, targeted, even strategic.
See, this is what I mean about those sneaky words. Invasion sounds way more, I don't know, aggressive and unjustified.
Absolutely. And again, it's not about defending one side or the other. It's about recognizing how these terms immediately color our perception of what's happening.
And it gets even trickier. Johnstone talks about how the destruction in Gaza is often described as a response to October 7th, but without fully explaining what even happened on October 7th.
Which makes it sound like, what? That Gaza just decided to get destroyed one Tuesday afternoon for no apparent reason.
Exactly. It's like saying, well, this happened and then they did that, but it leaves out a whole chunk of the story.
Right. Like, what prompted the initial action? What were the circumstances? Without that context, response starts to feel a lot like just. Another word for retaliation.
It's like they skipped a chapter in the book, and we're left trying to figure out who the bad guy is without all the information.
And that's exactly what Johnstone wants us to realize. It's easy to get caught up in those simplified narratives, especially when they're being presented to us by sources we trust. But we have to be more critical, ask ourselves, hold on, am I getting the whole picture here? Or am I only seeing what they want me to see?
So what's the solution here? I mean, we can't exactly become experts on every international conflict.
We don't have to. But we can be more aware of the power of language. We can question those labels and generalizations, especially when they're being used to describe complex situations.
And maybe seek out information from multiple sources.
That's key. Different news outlets have different biases. Reading a variety of sources helps you get a more well-rounded perspective. Think of it like you wouldn't judge a band just by listening to one song, right? You'd listen to a few tracks, maybe even a whole album, to get a feel for their style.
And who knows, you might even discover some new favorites along the way.
Exactly. It's about being curious, keeping an open mind, and not being afraid to question what you're reading or hearing.
So next time you're scrolling through headlines, take a moment. Pay attention to the language being used. Do you notice any inconsistencies, any double standards? It's amazing what you start to see when you start paying attention.
It really is. And who knows, you might just surprise yourself with how much more informed and discerning you become.
That's all the time we have for today, everyone. But keep those critical thinking caps on. Until next time.